For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, guys, welcome on back to the show. Before we go ahead and get into the rest of it, just anything that you guys want to say or comment on any of my lists so far, greatly appreciated. And I would love to hear if anybody disagrees with any of my takes at all, because that's always fun to get a debate going. But let's go ahead and get into the next part of our show, and that is top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL that are currently playing. So at number 5 that I have, as we just get right on into this, I have Jalen Hurts, the Super Bowl champion from just a few months ago. Take a look at his numbers last year. Obviously, he won the Super Bowl, so that's the biggest thing on his resume. But 68% completion percentage, just a shade under 3,000 yards passing, 18 touchdowns passing, just 5 interceptions. He also had 630 yards rushing and 14 touchdowns last year. I think he proved in that Super Bowl in particular that he is one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. He deserves to be mentioned. He's a Super Bowl champion now, which is more than he can say for some other guys that are on this list, as there really is only 2 Super Bowl champions that I put on this list, funny enough. But Jalen Hurts I have at number 5. I really like his fit with the Eagles. You know, that's just a match made in heaven. He's perfectly suited for that team and for that offense. Obviously, having Saquon Barkley is a big help, and having great receivers on the outside like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith definitely help as well. But Jalen Hurts is a fantastic quarterback. You don't think about too much of his, running ability so much, because a lot of the rushing touchdowns that he has were through the brotherly shove play, the essentially glorified quarterback sneak that the Eagles run. He gets a lot of touchdowns on that, and he gets a lot of touchdowns down by the goal line on just, scrambles or sweeps or design draws, things like that. He's very, very good at all of that. Don't get me wrong, but, he doesn't necessarily break 60-yard touchdown runs or anything like that, at least not like every other game or anything like that. He may have 1 or 2 of those on his resume. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, but he has a total. He had 18 touchdowns passing, 14 touchdowns rushing. So, he had 32 touchdowns overall last year. So he could have been in conversations for MVP as well. Those are MVP type numbers, 32 total touchdowns and 5 interceptions. That's a pretty good ratio to have, and still, solid in the running game as well. So Jalen Hurts definitely belongs in the top 5 in my opinion, and I think that Super Bowl in particular is what proved that. So number 4 that I have on this list is Josh Allen. He is your reigning league MVP. He last year had 12 rushing touchdowns, but as far as throwing the ball, he was 63% completion percentage, 3,731 yards, 28 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. That was the big thing with Josh Allen last year, is he cut way down on his interceptions. He was, in his earlier years, he was a little reckless with the ball. He would make some incredible plays like he still does, but his thing was that he would have these issues where he would throw, bad passes or passes into double coverage or triple coverage or whatever the case, and just wouldn't be great to watch. But he still always made plays. That was the one thing. His great plays far outweighed the mistakes that he made, but he really cut back on that this year. Only 6 interceptions. He was fantastic and well deserving of that Super Bowl. And he's another guy, or not the Super Bowl, the MVP. And he's another guy that had 12 rushing touchdowns, 28 touchdowns on passing. So he had a total of 40 touchdowns total on the year and 6 interceptions. So that's a very good year, of course, and well deserving of the MVP. So he's number 4 on my list of top quarterbacks. Number 3 that I have is the guy that a lot of people might think should have won the MVP last year, and that's Lamar Jackson. And you take a look at his numbers. It's very, very, it's hard to argue that you want him as the MVP. If you take a look at it, it's 66% completion percentage, which is more than Josh Allen had. 4,100 yards, which is more than Josh Allen had. 41 touchdowns passing. 45 total touchdowns, but 41 touchdowns passing, just 4 interceptions. Both of those numbers better than Josh Allen. And then, of course, just a shade under 1,000 yards rushing with 915 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns, all better than Josh Allen's numbers, except for the rushing touchdowns. Of course, Josh Allen had more than Lamar did, but Lamar was fantastic all year last year. Like I said before, he wasn't the reason why they lost that playoff game to Buffalo, but he is, he's one of those guys that's just, he's electric. He can really hurt you with either his feet or his arm. Earlier in his career, he wasn't necessarily, at least, mainstream media, a lot of people built him up to be an incredible quarterback before he was an incredible quarterback, in my opinion. I think he is now, but back when people were hyping him up a lot, I don't think he was quite there yet, but where he is now at his game, he's best that he's ever been. He is a very, very good passer of the ball. He's drastically improved in that over the years. And, of course, he's always been a great runner of the ball. That hasn't changed. He just has another weapon in the backfield, so that gives him more opportunities to take off and run, because a lot of people are kind of focusing on Derrick Henry running the ball, and rightfully so. So Lamar Jackson can take off. I know in that playoff game against Pittsburgh, they were getting them with the quarterback draw each and every time, and because they're focusing so much on Derrick Henry, and Lamar Jackson is just taken off untouched. But that's the threat that they pose with that offense there, and Lamar Jackson being able to do that, and that's why he is as high up on this list as he is. Now, number 2, I have Patrick Mahomes as the second best quarterback on this list, and that's right, and he is second overall. And this is just an overall quarterback. This is not based on, how many Super Bowls they've won. Otherwise, Patrick Mahomes would be number 1 on this list. But this is just overall quarterbacks. I think Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback, future Hall of Famer, first ballot, one of the greatest to ever do it, no doubt. All of those things are absolutely true. I just don't have him at number 1 just yet because of the performance that the guy at number 1 had last year and what he consistently does. But as far as Patrick Mahomes, obviously AFC champion last year, got to the Super Bowl, but I think everybody can agree that the offense wasn't nearly as good as we're accustomed to them being. And they're usually very explosive, and they weren't necessarily that last year. Mahomes still had decent numbers. He had 67% completion percentage, just a shade under 4,000 yards passing, 26 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Probably more interceptions than he would like. More interceptions that you're typically used to seeing him throw, to be honest. But he doesn't have the weapons that he once had with Tyreek Hill and all of them. A lot of the guys that they had on offense that were supposed to be big weapons for him were injured, like Rashee Rice. He got hurt by Patrick Mahomes in some friendly fire in a game where he tore up his knee. But they still had Xavier Worthy, who ended up being a pretty solid wide receiver as a rookie and will only get better, of course. So obviously Patrick Mahomes gets to the Super Bowl, so he deserves mentioning, and he's usually always in the Super Bowl. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, so you got to put him in the top 2, in my opinion, for sure. So Patrick Mahomes is your number 2 quarterback that is currently playing in the NFL in terms of just overall ability. And number 1, I have Joe Burrow here. And Joe Burrow is the only guy in the AFC that is currently playing that has beaten Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. So he has proven that he can do it. He can go head-to-head against Mahomes, and really should have beat him last year as well in Arrowhead, but if not for a controversial defensive pass interference call at the end of the game that was talked about a lot in the coming days after that game, but they ultimately lost that one. But Burrow, his numbers speak for themselves last year at least. He had a 70% completion percentage, far and away the best in the league in that regard. He had the highest passing yards, 4,918 yards, more than any other quarterback, 43 touchdowns passing, more than any other quarterback, and then he had the 9 interceptions. The problem that Joe Burrow had last year was that he was on a team that did not like to play defense. Their offense was putting up 30-plus points per game, but their defense was giving up about 30-plus points per game. So things just didn't really work out for the Bengals because of that. Their liabilities on defense is what ultimately cost them a shot at the playoffs and potentially another matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead to potentially move on in the playoffs. And they've proven that they can do it before, so, they've definitely got to be up there as consideration, for a team this year that could do something and do some major damage if they can stay healthy and if they can get that defense going again. But Joe Burrow, I think, absolutely deserves to be number one. I think he is the best pure passer, pure quarterback overall in the NFL right now. He doesn't have the accolades like Super Bowl titles. He's played in the Super Bowl, but he doesn't have any Super Bowl championships or anything like that. But this list right here is not based on Super Bowl champions. I'm just basing my list on physical quarterback ability overall, how they play overall, in the NFL. And that's kind of where I'm at. Because, you can make the argument when Aaron Rodgers was in his prime, a lot of people were saying that he was the best quarterback overall in the NFL. But he's not the greatest quarterback over, say, Tom Brady. When Tom Brady was playing in his prime, Aaron Rodgers was in his prime. And though a lot of people still said Aaron Rodgers was the best quarterback, Brady was still considered the greatest. So it's, there's a difference there. And I kind of am more in the lines of just technical ability and all that. So these are the guys that I have as my top 5 in the NFL. And it'll be interesting to see if anybody sneaks into this top 5 in the next coming years, or if any rookies that are coming out this year, if they end up being one of those great quarterbacks that we've seen in the past come from seemingly out of nowhere and end up being very, very good quarterbacks in their career. So that's my list. Jalen Hurts at 5, Josh Allen at 4, Lamar Jackson at 3, Patrick Mahomes at 2, and Joe Burrow at number 1. So we're going to take another break. When we come back, it's going to be our final segment of tonight, and we are going to be talking about the guys that the quarterbacks throw to, and that is the wide receivers, my top 5 wide receivers in the NFL. So stick with us, and we will be right back for our final segment of the night.